You ever trust someone so much that you'd never imagine they could stab you in the back? I thought family meant safety. I thought love meant loyalty, but I was wrong. Sometimes the people closest to you can turn your life into a nightmare. And when the truth finally is out, it's never gentle. It hits like a storm tear. Today, everything apart. I'm sharing my story today on Velory Diaries. Stay till you because making you question who you happen next will make you don't really trust. The moment the front door opened, everything felt wrong. The air inside carried a scent that didn't belong. Different perfumes, different energy, different people. What was once a place of warmth and safety had turned into something cold and unfamiliar. There were voices echoing from the living room, laughter that didn't sound like home. The furniture was moved around, things placed differently, and the little details that once reflected years of memories had been wiped away. It felt like walking into a stranger's house that just happened to share the same walls as the one that once held all the pieces of a life built with love and trust. Every corner held a ghost of what used to be, but now even the ghosts felt like intruders. The sense of belonging had vanished, replaced by confusion and a growing ache that spread quietly through the chest. There's a certain kind of pain that comes from realizing your safe space no longer recognizes you. And this was it. The silent heartbreak of being a stranger in your own home. In the center of that chaos stood the sister, smiling calm, pretending everything was perfectly normal. That smile didn't reach her eyes, though. It was the kind of smile people wear when they've rehearsed their lie too many times and hope no one notices the cracks. She greeted warmly, almost as if expecting gratitude instead of questions, like taking over someone's home was an act of kindness. There was a strange stillness behind her tone, something controlled and deliberate, like she had already planned what to say. The way she moved around, giving instructions to the people in the house, showed confidence, ownership even. It wasn't just that she had taken over the space. She had claimed it emotionally too, erasing boundaries that were never hers to cross. Every framed picture on the walls now looked like part of her world, not the shared one that once existed. The photographs of family moments that used to bring comfort now felt hollow, like decorations used to legitimize her presence. The home had been rewritten to tell her story, not the one it originally carried. Her voice filled the rooms where once there had been quiet conversations and laughter shared between people who trusted each other completely. Now that laughter sounded foreign, forced, almost cruel. The silence that followed the first few words exchanged was heavier than any argument could be. There was no need for shouting. The betrayal spoke louder than words ever could. Seeing her so at ease, so unapologetically settled in a space that wasn't hers, cut deeper than any fight could. It wasn't just about the house. It was about respect, trust, and the invisible bond that once tied two people together through blood and love. In that moment, standing in what used to be a home but now felt like an occupied shell, the realization hit like a quiet storm. Sometimes people don't need to leave you to hurt you. They just have to replace you where you once belonged. Every corner of the house felt like a reminder of what used to be, yet nothing looked the same anymore. The walls that once carried laughter and shared secrets now echoed emptiness, coated with new colors and rearranged memories. Every step revealed something missing. A photograph replaced, a chair moved, a curtain changed. The living room, once warm and filled with comforting silence, was now crowded with her touch, her presence, her control. The sense of belonging that once came so naturally had been stripped away, replaced with a haunting question. How can a home feel so alive yet so lifeless at the same time? It was as if the past had been erased on purpose, rewritten by someone desperate to make it their own. The smell of fresh paint lingered like a taunt, covering the familiar scent of the past, as if to bury every trace of what it once stood for. The memories that had built the house into a home were no longer welcome. They had been replaced by someone else's version of comfort, someone else's definition of ownership. There was something deeper in the way things had been altered, subtle but intentional. It wasn't just about decoration or change. It was about control. The smallest details screamed of possession. The framed family photo that used to sit on the table was gone, replaced with something colder, something that didn't belong. Every touch, every rearrangement carried a silent message: this space is mine now. And yet, behind that calm exterior, There was something strange and uneasiness that couldn't be hidden no matter how hard she tried. The air was thick with unspoken words, with tension that hummed just beneath the surface, waiting to explode. When the explanation came, it was dressed as reassurance. She said it was temporary, just for a while, only until things settled. But the way her eyes shifted, the way her voice softened too much, it all hinted at something else. It didn't sound temporary. It sounded practiced. There was no hesitation in her tone, no apology in her body language, only a quiet confidence that betrayed her words. Each word that left her mouth felt rehearsed, like a story told too many times to make it believable anymore. The lie hung between them, heavy and fragile, like glass ready to shatter with one wrong word. There was a flicker of guilt in her eyes, gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a calmness that almost felt cruel. Trust started to crumble in that moment, not because of the act itself, but because of how easily it was justified. The pretense of kindness couldn't hide the truth that she had no intention of giving back what she had taken. The house wasn't borrowed, it was claimed. The lie wasn't meant to comfort, it was meant to distract. And standing there in the ruins of shared memories, the truth began to take shape. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. It was a choice, deliberate and final, disguised behind a smile that no longer felt familiar. The room that once held peace now felt like a stranger's space. The walls had the same color, but the feeling was gone. The bed was neatly made, but not with the same sheets that once carried nights of comfort and familiarity. The books that once sat neatly on the shelf were gone, replaced by things that didn't belong. Even the mirror reflected a place that no longer felt personal. It was like walking into someone else's version of life, where every trace of identity had been carefully erased. The faint scent of perfume that used to linger after long nights had vanished, replaced by something new, something foreign. Every detail felt intentional, as if someone had gone out of their way to wipe away the person who had lived there. The memories that had once made this room warm and safe were replaced by emptiness, leaving behind nothing but silence that felt too loud to bear. There's a kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from loss, but from being replaced. Every object that was missing felt like a piece of self stolen and hidden away. The drawers that once held familiar belongings now contained things that didn't tell the same story. It was impossible not to notice how effortlessly everything had been changed, how deliberately the past had been wiped clean. The air itself carried a distance, as if the walls were whispering that this was no longer home. The emptiness wasn't physical, it was emotional, buried deep within every inch of the room that used to represent belonging. What used to be a sanctuary now stood as proof that even the most personal spaces can be taken away without warning. The silence became unbearable, heavier with every second that passed. Questions filled the mind, but none of them had answers that could bring comfort. How does someone do this to their own? How can someone erase the person who helped build the very walls they now stand behind? Yet anger didn't come right away, only disbelief. It's the kind of disbelief that keeps you still, quiet, unable to breathe properly. The realization that blood doesn't always mean loyalty settled like a slow ache in the chest. Staying calm became an act of survival. There was no point in screaming, no reason to fight over what was already lost. The pain wasn't in the act itself, but in the quiet confidence of betrayal. Watching someone so close treat everything shared as if it never mattered tore something deeper than trust. It broke the invisible bond of love that family was supposed to protect. The room didn't just lose its memories, it lost its soul. And standing there, surrounded by a lifetime of erased moments, the quiet truth began to echo. Betrayal doesn't always come with violence or anger. Sometimes it comes in silence, in calm words, in gentle smiles that hide cruelty. Sometimes it comes from the ones you believed would never hurt you. And that kind of pain never really leaves. The days that followed were heavy with silence and tension that seemed to fill every room. She moved around as if nothing had happened, giving directions, answering phone calls, and laughing with people who didn't belong there. It was strange watching her act so comfortable, so unbothered, in a place that wasn't hers to claim. The way she carried herself said everything. Her confidence wasn't born from innocence. It was built from control. She walked through the house like an owner, touching things that weren't hers, making decisions that weren't hers to make. The worst part was the calmness, the casual ease in her tone, the way she smiled when questioned, pretending that everything was fine. It was a performance, carefully rehearsed, designed to make anyone who doubted her seem unreasonable. But beneath that calm surface, there was something else, a faint flicker of guilt that showed in her eyes when she thought no one was looking. It wasn't remorse, though. It was fear of being exposed. There's a certain stillness in people who know they've crossed a line but aren't ready to face the consequences. Every time she spoke, her words felt coated in false kindness. Her laughter echoed in ways that felt wrong, loud and forced, bouncing off the walls like a reminder that peace no longer lived there. It was painful to watch someone take what they didn't earn and pretend it was always theirs. Each small gesture carried arrogance. Each glance reminded that this wasn't about sharing. It was about winning. The house had turned into a quiet battlefield where the weapons weren't loud arguments or broken things but silence, pretense, and emotional distance. The weight of betrayal hung in the air, too thick to ignore. Every attempt to reason with her was met with charm, with deflection, with words that said everything and nothing at the same time. It was the kind of manipulation that made you question your own sanity. Was it really betrayal, or was it just misunderstanding? But deep down, the truth had already settled. She wasn't confused or mistaken. She knew exactly what she was doing. Then, just when the tension seemed unbearable, a knock came at the door. It was unexpected, loud, sharp, and perfectly timed to break the stillness that had taken over the house. For a second, everything froze. The laughter stopped, the fake calm vanished, and fear flashed across her face. It was quick but clear, a kind of panic that only appears when secrets are about to come to light. Her confident posture fell away, replaced by uncertainty. The people inside exchanged worried glances, their voices dropping to whispers. The shift was instant, almost eerie. That one sound, the simple knock, carried more power than any confrontation ever could. It cracked the illusion she had built and revealed something darker beneath it. Whatever was hidden behind her calmness was now at risk of being exposed. And for the first time, it was clear that this story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about something far deeper and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The sound of that knock seemed to change everything. It wasn't just a visitor at the door. It was the sound of truth demanding to be heard. The shift in the air was immediate. The confident faces turned pale, and the calm that had been held so tightly began to crack. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to keep her composure, but the fear in her eyes gave her away. For days she had controlled every word, every moment, every emotion in that house. But now, that control was slipping through her fingers. She exchanged a nervous glance with the people around her, whispering something under her breath that no one could fully catch. It was like watching a wall crumble, one brick at a time. The mask she wore, so perfectly built, was breaking, revealing the panic that had been hiding underneath all along. The knock came again, louder this time, more demanding, as if whoever stood outside wasn't going to leave until someone answered. The tension was unbearable. The laughter and confidence that once filled the room had vanished, replaced by silence thick enough to cut through. Every second felt stretched, every breath held in anticipation. No one wanted to move, but the fear in her eyes spoke louder than words. Whoever was at that door wasn't supposed to be there. She tried to act normal, forcing a smile, pretending that nothing was wrong, but her body betrayed her. Her hands shook as she reached for the doorknob, and her voice cracked as she spoke. That moment revealed everything, the guilt, the secrets, the lies that had been hidden beneath her calm exterior. And then the truth began to unravel. The person at the door wasn't just any visitor. They carried the weight of what had been done, the truth that had been buried deep beneath manipulation and deceit. Words were exchanged quietly at first, but soon they spilled over into the room, bringing with them the one thing she feared most, exposure. Her lies didn't survive the confrontation. Every secret she had tried to keep hidden came tumbling out like shattered glass, sharp and painful. The reality of what she had done, of how far she had gone to protect her image, came crashing down around her. There were no more excuses, no more pretending that it was temporary or harmless. Tears followed the truth, but they weren't enough to undo the damage. The fear that had flickered in her eyes turned into desperation as the people around her began to see her differently. The illusion of control had finally been destroyed. She had spent days holding on to power built on lies, but it took only a few moments for the truth to tear it apart. The house that once felt like a stage for her performance now became the witness to her downfall. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, filled with the weight of betrayal exposed. And in that silence, the truth stood naked, undeniable, and irreversible. The truth that came out that night changed everything. It didn't just reveal lies. It shattered the illusion that family meant safety. The air in the room was thick with disbelief as every hidden piece of the puzzle fell into place. The words spoken were sharp and cold, cutting through the last bits of trust that once held everything together. What was uncovered wasn't a simple mistake or misunderstanding. It was betrayal built over time, carefully disguised as care. Every kind gesture, every promise, every moment of reassurance now felt poisoned with deception. The revelation hit hard because it wasn't about strangers or enemies. It was about someone who was supposed to protect, not destroy. The truth had a way of changing how everything looked. The memories, the laughter, the bond, all of it now carried a shadow of doubt. There's a certain silence that follows deep betrayal, one that doesn't come from shock alone, but from heartbreak too heavy to express. In that silence, the walls seemed to echo with what had been lost. Family pictures look different now, like they belong to another life, another version of the people who once smiled without suspicion. The home no longer felt like a place of warmth or connection. It had turned into a reminder of trust broken beyond repair. The knock on the door had opened more than a secret. It had opened a wound that couldn't be closed easily. What was discovered in that moment wasn't just betrayal, but a pattern of manipulation that had been unfolding for much longer than anyone realized. Every choice, every lie, every act of control had been leading to this one breaking point. The hardest part wasn't the loss of a house or possessions. It was the loss of faith. To look at someone who shares your blood and realize they're capable of deception so deep is a pain that can't be compared to anything else. It changes the way you see people, the way you trust, the way you love. It teaches that loyalty isn't guaranteed just because someone carries the same name or history. That night became a lesson written in heartbreak, a reminder that love without respect becomes dangerous and forgiveness without truth is impossible. In the days that followed, the silence lingered. There were no more excuses left to offer, no more stories to hide behind. The truth stood on its own, undeniable and cruel. The home that once held laughter now held only memories too painful to revisit. Yet within the destruction, there was also clarity. The lies had been exposed, the masks had fallen, and though everything was broken, at least the truth was finally free. Sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy you, it awakens you. It shows who people really are and what love should never become. And even when the pieces of trust can never fit back together, knowing the truth becomes its own kind of freedom, the painful kind that teaches you to protect your peace, even from those you once called family. In the end, this story wasn't just about a house being taken or a betrayal uncovered. It was about awakening to the truth of human nature. Sometimes, the deepest wounds don't come from enemies, but from those who share your blood. So what happened inside those walls revealed how fragile trust really is and how easily love can be twisted when power, greed, and pride take over. It was a reminder that family isn't defined by DNA or shared history. It's defined by respect, loyalty, and honesty. When those are gone, all that's left are memories of what love used to look like. The pain of betrayal leaves scars, but it also brings strength. Through the chaos, through the heartbreak, comes a realization that peace doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting go. Letting go of people who pretend to care. Letting go of places that no longer feel like home, and letting go of versions of love that only exist in illusion. The truth may hurt, but it frees you from living inside someone else's lie. This story stands as a quiet warning and a powerful lesson. Protect your peace, trust actions over words, and never mistake closeness for loyalty. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to see who truly stands beside you. And when you finally rise from what was meant to break you, you realize that strength isn't found in revenge or anger. It's found in walking away with your dignity and your truth intact. Because in the end, no matter how deep the betrayal runs, the heart that heals honestly will always come out stronger than the one that deceived